Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Ranking the Albums. It's Sunday morning. Well, Sunday morning where we are. It might be afternoon or evening by you, but thanks for spending some time with us here today as we rank the catalog of Liquid Tension Experiment alongside my co-buddies from In the Prog Seat and 4 Fusion Friday, Mr. George Lamie and Mr. Eric Porter. What's going on, guys? How are you?
Good morning.
Morning.
We just it seems like we just did that marathon 4 Fusion Friday show, which was great and very difficult, and here we have picked out another great and difficult assignment. So for those of you who don't know Liquid Tension Experiment, thanks for tuning in and learning about a really cool band. This is like a side project of a couple guys from Dream Theater and the great Tony Levin from King Crimson and Peter Gabriel, and a million other projects on bass and stick. We've got John Petrucci on guitar, Jordan Rudess on keyboards, and Mike Portnoy, of course, on drums. Now back in Dream Theater, so now we can actually say Dream Theater drummer once again. Mike, of course, has done a million other things, but also. So, yeah, so 3 albums, 3 studio albums. You got 2 that came out, boom, 1980, 1998, 1999, and then 20 some odd years, with 22-year gap till the 3rd one. So we're going to rank them. These are the 3. We were just talking off camera about how difficult this is because all 3 are so similar. All 3 have mind-blowing stuff on them. Arguably, all 3 have some filler, not maybe filler, but just kind of like stuff that maybe might not work 100% like some of the other stuff. Great songs, great playing, big, long jams. That's what you get here. So with all that being said, we'll start at number 3. We'll go George, Eric, and myself round the round till we get to number 1. So George, kick us off.
So yeah, there's always when we do these shows, there's always the what I expect, and then what I get out of it when I start digging into them, refreshing.
100%. And before we go on, how many of us thought it was going to be one way that we were going to rank them, and then when we actually sat down and did it, it was completely different?
Yeah.
It ended up being what I thought. But
really? Okay. Well, that's cool.
Okay. Yeah, it changed at first, and then it went back to what I thought.
Back. Okay, mine was. I didn't expect how I was going to rank these, and
so my initial thought was that number 3 was going to be Liquid Tension 3. And then when I started doing the refresh, I had to, hey, wait a minute here. This is compares more favorably to my number 2 than I thought. So I had it pushed up for most of the week. Then as the week wore on, I did start to see why I had it the way I had it. The strong tracks here, this is kind of patterned after the first album, where you have a certain amount of set pieces, a couple of more improv based shorter pieces that serve as a buffer between the set pieces. And the set pieces are all super strong. Hypersonic is an incredible opener. You're going to hear that for every one of these albums. All the openers are designed to blow your socks off.
Yes. Yep.
And this one does the job. The Passage of Time is probably my second favorite. That's a pretty straight ahead jammer. Rhapsody in Blue is an old Gershwin composition that they were doing live before they went on the long hiatus. But this is the first representation in the studio. I know some people don't like that track. They don't like that they put it on here after it was on the live album. I like it. And then Key to the Imagination is the epic 13-minute track. All good stuff. You have a couple of small short improvs, and then you have Shades of Hope, which every album John and Jordan do a duet, and that's the one for this album. This one breaks down pretty straight for me. I like all the set pieces, the shorter tracks less so, and that's I would say that about the stuff on the first album too. None of the duets. They're all nice ballads, but not going to be my favorite at any point. This might be the best of those 3. Splitting hairs, but and then there's a second disc of improvs for people that are into that. But just going on the album itself, small portions, but I'm going to put it at number 3.
Okay, cool. Eric?
Yep, we always do this to ourselves, don't we? Where make it as hard as possible. Like you guys said, these are very close. And I got into Liquid Tension Experiment. I knew about Dream Theater. I dabbled. Metal isn't or hasn't always been my favorite thing, but I knew about them and I had a couple things. And what I really enjoyed was, I think in the first one and the second one, there's some really good liner notes. You get to read about how the band was put together, and you guys know Dream Theater. So Rudis at this time was not in Dream Theater, correct? It was still Sharinian.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting reading about Mike Portney, I guess, was approached by Mike Varney, and I forget the other guy, but it was Varney, I think, did Magna Carta Records, and he was in Guitar Player a lot because he did that in the Spotlight, and he brought a lot of these metal guys, brought them attention through Guitar Player. But what I thought was interesting was we've seen how Mike has done stuff with Neil Morse, Flying Colors, Winery Dogs. So obviously he's always had that itch, which I love about a musician, that they want to explore other things. And I just thought it was funny that as he was talking, they were having a lot of trouble agreeing or finding a guitar player who was available that they wanted. And he ends up, his wife, I guess, said to him, well, what about John? And he's like, yeah, he goes, and I always had him in the back of my mind, but I get where he might have wanted to play with somebody different. But when you listen to these, now it's hard to listen to them and say, what would it sound like without Petrucci? Because I think his stamp is all over this stuff. And there's a lot of things I like about this. I think on each record, they inject some humor, which you might not always expect from such serious musicians, but I kind of enjoyed that. You hear a couple moments where Portney's yelling at the end of a song, or I thought that stuff was very cool. But I really enjoy Levin's always done a ton of stuff as a sideman and different bands. And I just think it's a cool concept, and I kind of wish musicians would do more. Like George said, every opener on every record is killer. Paradigm Shift on this one, absolutely great. Very interesting how Osmosis kind of flips that one. Don't laugh at me, but it's like a pretty melody. That one is, I like the feel of that though. Gets atmospheric. Kindred Spirits. I think that's the thing with this stuff, is even when you're listening to stuff, maybe the improv stuff, you're always going to find a great riff or there's an awesome solo, and maybe it doesn't stick with you for the full run of the song, but there's some great ideas. And I think that was kind of the part of it. They only rehearsed for a week, correct? And then the recording process was pretty quick. So the fact that this stuff is so complex, came off so well. I'll give them a little room. You're not going to like everything, or you might question what are they doing here. It gets a little noodly, but absolutely fantastic. So the only reason I'm going with the first one, don't laugh at me. I think 3 Minute Warning, just that one I have a very difficult time getting through. It's very long. There's some great pop spots in it, but it's just tough for me to get through. And never put whistling on a record. So Chris and Kevin's Excellent Adventure, I can't do whistling. So if we're gonna split hairs and separate them, that's why I'm putting this one at number 3. But a great record.
A lot of what you just said is the reason why I picked LTE1 as my number 3. I fully anticipated this might be my number 1 going in, and then as I'm revisiting these, because I hadn't listened to these in a while. The main reason I think for me, 3 Minute Warning is way too long. I think that could have easily been trimmed by 10 plus minutes. There's some great stuff in it. There's some great shredding soloing. I mean, I love parts of it, but at 28 and a half minutes, it's a lot to take in, and it at times does not hold my interest. But Paradigm Shift is arguably the best song in their catalog. I mean, what a way to open up your debut album. I mean, it's amazing. Osmosis, I love. Great melodies. There are a lot of really good melodies on this album. Kindred Spirits is really cool. Nice groove on that. I like that you can hear Tony Levin a lot in the mix on this album. And I think that's one of the things I miss about the most recent album. I don't hear enough of him. The Stretch is kind of funky. Freedom of Speech is great. Yeah, Chris and Kevin's Excellent Adventure is kind of weird, sappy sort of stuff, but I like it. And State of Grace is just absolutely gorgeous. Universal Mind is another good one. I mean, really, there's not much you can say bad about this album at all. I think all these albums are pretty terrific, but I think for me, it's just that It's got one track, which is just a bit too long. And the little avant-garde pieces kind of hit or miss for me. But the rest of it's all really, really good. So yeah, that's my number 3.
I actually wish the stretch had gone longer. It's
Yeah,
kind
I
of a
agree.
different feel than anything else.
It's
And I wish
way too brief. Yeah, it's
they
way
played that one out a bit more.
I like the funky nature of it because I don't think they did enough of that type of stuff. And I would have loved that to have been like a 6-minute long track or something, allow them to kind of do a little more with it. But
and you guys are, you're more familiar with Dream Theater. I think he's great with the wah-wah pedal too. I love
yeah, he uses it a bit in Dream Theater too.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, George, back to you.
Yeah, that's my number 2. Like I said, this had, when I first dug into them this week, this had fallen behind number 3. And as I start listening and really comparing, the short pieces I think are better on this one than on Liquid Tension 3. The short stuff, Osmosis and the Stretch in particular, I think are more interesting than the short stuff on 3. And also the long songs, the set pieces, Paradigm Shift and Universal Mind, are better than the 2 hot pieces on that album for me. So right there, I was led that way. 3-Minute Warning does take it down a little bit for me, like you guys said, too long. But it was better than I remembered. I actually stopped playing that track after a while because it's last. So at some point I had stopped playing that track. So I played it again this week, and yeah, I still don't fully embrace it, but it was more interesting than I remember. It's not bad at all. It's just I'm not wired for improvisation like that. I'm more into composition. So it's not one that I'll play very often when I do play this, but Paradigm, like Pete said, Paradigm Shift's got to be one of the best songs in their catalog. That assault in the beginning. I had heard about this album before it came out. I go and I get it home, and that it just kicks you in the head right when it comes out. And that the Petrucci solo in that song, like Eric was saying, the wah pedal work. A friend of mine that's always ripping on Petrucci for being too precise and too mechanical and stuff. He heard Paradigm Shift and he was like, all right, that's more like it. Dude's digging into it and just feeling something. You can finally, I feel something out of this guy finally.
He's actually, when he wants to, he's a really good melodic player. I think, fortunately, how much room for that in Dream Theater music, not a lot at times, but he can do it.
Yep.
Yeah. So by a slim margin, I will have this over number 3. That's my number 2.
Eric, your middle one.
My middle one, I'm going right in order. I think with this one, it might be a sequencing, because again, like you guys said, we're talking about splitting hairs. These are all, if you like one, you're going to like them all. And they're all very similar. But I think with this one, for me, starts out killer. The only Acid Rain, like we talked about, all their openers are just amazing, absolutely amazing. Great riffs, very intense. By Accident is another. I really like that. Great outro, I think, on that one too. Really heavy. Favorite part of the track, I think, on that one is the outro. 914, I think that's one of the improvised ones. That one kind of loses me a bit. But I think what happens is I love When the Water Breaks. That's kind of their prog epic, I guess, on this one. But then when you get to the last 3, it really kind of puts a halt on the record. Chewbacca, there's some great parts, but then that one kind of gets airy and it does pick up again at the end. But Liquid Dreams and Hourglass, which I like the songs, but I think those 3 in a row kind of kill the momentum of the record for me. So it's not that I don't like the tunes, it's more maybe the placement of the tunes on this. Because Hourglass is that's another one I'll say. It's really, it's a beautiful melody, I think. And I like Rudis's piano in there. Liquid Dreams is kind of mellow, airy, one of their atmospheric things. And I like that they do that. I like how they mix things up. Everything's not intense and in your face. And like you said, if anyone questions that John can play with feel and be melodic, it's all here. I mean, sure, he does the heavy stuff and the fast stuff, but I think he plays some great solos on all 3 of these records. But I think for me, it's the sequencing of the record. I would have liked to seen those mellow things maybe mixed in a little bit, and maybe something heavy to end the record as well. So again, splitting hairs, great record. I'm not sure I'm great on the sequencing of this one. So that's my number 2.
I am 100% with Eric. Everything he said. To me, this is a tale of 2 albums here, or 2 halves. I love the first half. I like the second half a lot. I find that it meanders a little bit towards the end. Like Acid Rain is, again, another face melting opener. Amazing. I think Portnoy's drumming is incredible on this album. I love Rudis's piano and synth stuff in this particular song. So good. By Accident is terrific. Might be the catchiest song in their catalog. And, what do you call By Accident? Is that prog rock? Right? Like, what do you call these guys, right? They do like little bits of everything here. Really, really cool. 914 is cool, little experimental. And there's no Petrucci on that, which is kind of interesting, right? I guess that's when his wife had the baby and he went off for a bit, whatever. But yeah, When the Water Breaks, so good. Another one of my favorite tracks from their catalog. It's really melodic. I love the John solos throughout the whole thing. Really good. Jordan throws in this cool organ solo, then follows it up with a synth solo. Really, really cool. Portnoy is just blazing all over this album. Chewbacca is a really weird tune. It's like the beginning is amazing, the ending is amazing, and then there's all this meandering stuff in the middle that I just don't understand. Man, if you cut this, it's what, like 13 minutes and change. Make this an 8-minute long song. It's the best song on the album for me. But it just meanders too much. I like Liquid Dreams, again, a little kind of long, a little mellow, and Hourglass is gorgeous, but they end the album on that, which I think is kind of weird. I think Hourglass would have worked a lot better, maybe the 3rd or 4th track, but I don't know. Again, we're splitting hairs. This is a really, really good album. This was almost my number 1, based on some really strong tracks here, but I was surprised. Obviously we know what our number 1 is, right, Eric? But
yes,
I didn't expect that at all, because
me either.
We don't have much history with that one, right, George? I mean, it's like the other
Yeah.
ones we had for years, and this one just came out a couple of years ago. And anyway, we'll get to that in a minute.
I still have my Best Buy sticker on the first one. So
back when they sold music, right?
Right.
Yeah. Number 2 ended up as my number 1, which is, I had thought so. I think I like what you guys don't like. I think I like that it's front loaded, because by the time When the Water Breaks is over, I'm exhausted. I think I don't care at that point, that it does peter out, and there's no doubt about it. The 2 long improvs, Chewbacca and Liquid Dreams, they're solid. They're as good as any of their improv stuff. And some, like Pete said, some of Chewbacca's really good. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't compare to the first 5. But that first 5, Acid Rain, By Accident, and When the Water Breaks, those 3 are as good as any songs in their catalog. As a top 3, I think it beats the top 3s of the other 2. By Accident is, like Pete said, super melodic, and some of the parts in there, maybe as close to fusion as they ever got. There's like a Latin-y thing in there. Yeah. Petrucci pulling the acoustic out and doing little Demiola-esque runs and stuff. Another Dimension, actually, a lot of people have said about this band, stupid guys, that it's just Dream Theater without vocals. It's not really, but if there was one track they could point to, it would be Another Dimension. Dream Theater even did it live. It's on one of the DVDs, I think. So that's pretty kind of Dream Theater-ish. 914 is the resident short thing on this album. I like that they didn't do the short thing on this album too. I don't always like that little short pieces peppered in. So for those sequencing reasons and the fact that it's different, I ended up, and because the strong tracks are so good, that's why it ended up number 1 for me.
Yeah, I couldn't argue with that. Yep. All right, Eric, let's talk about the 3rd album.
So I think you said it, Pete. I did not expect this to be my favorite when I went back and listened to them. And I don't remember which song you said, so I apologize. But on this one, I think that Beating the Odds, that might be, like, to me, the most catchy earworm. I'm not on that one. I think the only thing is I don't care for some of the sounds Jordan used on that one, but I find that to be a really catchy song. That's, if you might laugh, if you're going to say there's an earworm, I think that's one. Hypersonic, again, an equal with the other two openers. Absolutely fantastic, monstrous riffs. Liquid Evolution, I like that one. I get like a Hackett vibe from Petrucci in that. Again, atmospheric keys from Jordan, and then a lot of swells and soloing over the top of that one. Passage of Time, just more classic riffs from them. That amazes me that, and it is fun from a band perspective. I'm sure they get these guys in a room, they just start jamming, and then it's like, oh, that was, play that again or whatever. That was great. The riffs these guys come up with, whether it's John, Tony, whoever, Jordan, just absolutely killer stuff. Again, that Kevin and Chris's, or Chris and Kevin, I'm sure that's fun for them. For me, that's a skipper. Rhapsody in Blue, George, you surprised me because I figured you'd be like, I think what I really like about that one is it gives them like a melodic center to come back to. So you've got that theme, then they go off and do what they do. They'll come back to it at times. I love when Levin sneaks in that little elephant talk riff. I forget where that's placed, but it just cracked me up, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. But I really like that they can go off, do their own thing. They come back, they give you that recognizable melody, probably brings everyone back to the center, and then they can go off again. But I was very impressed with that. Not that I would second guess anything that these guys do or could do, but I really, really like that. And for me, Keys to the Imagination, the outro solo from John Petrucci might be one of my favorite solos I've ever heard him do. I absolutely love that. That gives me chills. And it might be about a 3-4 minute outro, but I think he kills it on that. Absolutely excels. And Shades of Hope, I'm going backwards because I just talked about the last song, but Shades of Hope, that's another one. It's Petrucci's very tasteful in that one. So again, I think people who might think he's a little stiff or too clean, go listen to some Liquid Tension Experiment, because I think maybe he shows more than what he does on Dream Theater stuff, but I can't fault this guy at all. I mean, he's fantastic, and I love what he does on these records. So that ends up being my number 3 is my number 1.
Yep, same here. And yeah, I think Petrucci's one of the greatest guitar players we have on the planet. I mean, he's really amazing, and he gets criticism from some for, like we said, not being melodic enough, not playing with enough feel or emotion. But he can do it. He's in a band that doesn't feature that type of playing, right? But you do hear a little bit more of it in some of this stuff, and certainly on the solo records as well. What's incredible about this album, and revisiting, because I mean, I listened to this a lot when it came out just a couple of years ago. This is 2021, reviewed and whatnot. Is that 22 years later, and most of the band are guys our age, right? And then you got Tony Levin here, who's in his 70s, right? Just imagine being Tony Levin playing with these guys today, younger guys a lot younger than him, who are really at the peak of their powers, their musical abilities. And he is, when you get older, things slow down. So I can only imagine Tony Levin thinking, holy shit, how do I still keep up with these guys? He was probably saying that back then as well. Because when you think about a project like this, you don't really think of a guy like maybe Tony Levin being a great fit, but he's so good on these albums. I think the only thing for me, my only drawback on this album, I've mentioned it before, is like in the mix, I don't hear him enough as I do on the first 2 albums. I know he's there, he's there, but he was a little bit more prominent in the mix to my ears on the first 2 albums, but he's still doing some great stuff on here. I mean, Hypersonic is amazing. Again, another face-melting opener. Love it. Eric, you mentioned Beating the Odds. Yes, to me, that is like the kind of like anthemic prog rock melodic track on this album. And I could totally see that song in another band with vocals and working really, really well. It's just really anthemic sounding. I love it. Really good. Liquid Evolution, kind of like, you mentioned Steve Hackett. It reminds me of Steve Hackett's kind of like more world fusion, new agey type stuff. There's got that kind of feel. The keyboards are really nice guitar playing on there. The Passage of Time, another memorable one. I love the unison stuff between John and Jordan. Really, really great. Chris and Kevin's Amazing Journey. Kind of cool to hear Tony on upright bass. But yeah, it's whatever, it is what it is. I love Rhapsody in Blue. Really majestic, a lot of killer solos. Shades of Time is gorgeous, and Key to the Imagination is amazing. And I like how on that song, they keep you on your toes throughout the whole thing. It's like you got like this kind of like majestic kind of prog rock, and then it switches to prog metal and it bashes your head in for a couple minutes, then it goes back again, then it goes back again, and it flips flops back and forth all throughout the whole song. Really, really good. I do want to mention, because we said we weren't going to consider it in this, but I actually think A Night at the Improv is a lot of fun on here too. It's not a everyday listen when I come to this album, but there's some blistering playing on that. So I think anybody who is interested in checking out this album, you get this whole bonus disc of just, amazing improvs, which, show you more of what these guys can do. So, but first things first, they do write lots of good songs and melodies on these albums. I think that's the key. This is not just instrumental Dream Theater shred wankery. It's really not. Is there lots of wankery on here? Yeah, but you get lots of other really cool stuff too. So yeah, that's surprisingly my number one. Did not expect that at all.
We should do a ranking of the openers next and see what the favorite opener.
Do you feel like because this one is the first one where it is the three Dream Theater guys from the get-go, do you feel it's more Dream Theater-y than the first two, maybe? And maybe that's why
I don't know if I feel it's more Dream Theater-y, because again, you have, because Mike's been, that's the interesting thing about the story of this band. So Mike has been apart from them for a long time until this album, right? Because Mike left the band and he was doing his own thing, Transatlantic and Winery Dogs and Flying Colors and a million other things, Neil Morse band. So I don't get that at all. But I truly feel when I listen to these albums, and it's weird that I'm even saying this, that Jordan, Mike, and John have really matured as players. Let's face it, these guys are at their peak of their powers right now. You can arguably say, well, how were they not 30, 20 years ago? I feel with all they've done in the years since the second album, that there's no way you can convince me that they haven't gotten better as players. And that's why I made the comment before about Tony, because Tony is an older guy, and Tony Levin has always been amazing. But he's got to be thinking, because everybody slows down at some point. He's got to be thinking, holy cow, how do I keep up with these guys who have only gotten better since the last time we did this? And he's amazing on the album, don't get me wrong, but I think those three have even gotten better. So no, I don't know. When I listen to this band, I don't hear just kind of them rehashing Dream Theater at all. It's to me, it's a totally separate thing. And I've seen them live, and they blew my face off live. So it's,
I think I remember a lot of quotes from Tony at the times of when all these albums came out. He does like a studio log on his site, and he's always talking about how the boys keeping me busy with all the notes. So he feels the same way as you. It's like he's been pushed to those limits, and I think he even said it's only because he has the stick that he can pull off some of the unison runs. He's not a unison run kind of guy.
No, he's not at all.
That's not the guy you'd get for a unison run kind of record, but he can do it because he's got the stick and he's got those little sticks.
Chops, yeah.
He can pull off a lot of stuff you wouldn't think he could pull off.
Yeah, because when you really sit down to think about it, right? If we go back to 1999, would he have been anyone's first choice as someone who's a no-brainer for this project? I would have thought like someone like Billy Sheehan, right, who could do this type of thing. He does it all the time. But now you're like, it makes perfect sense now, right? Mm-hmm. But maybe not the absolute perfect guy for the role, but he did it, and he's fit right in, and I wouldn't change it at this point.
Yeah,
I think it's what makes them unique, because you got these three young whippersnappers, well, not anymore, and you got the old veteran, right, who's done it all, and let's drop him in the middle of this powder keg and see what happens, and boom, magic happened.
Marketing wise, a lot of people, their only interest in this band is Tony Levin. A lot of people are more into him than the Dream Theater guys.
Oh, of course, yeah, he doesn't disappoint. I would love to one day pick Tony's brain and just be like, all right, truthfully, from here and here, tell us what this experience has been like for you, to hear it like directly from him, because I'm sure this has got to be fun for him, right? This is like, all right, I get to flex my muscles for and really just dig deep and just do something I don't normally do, because this is kind of, granted, a lot of the King Crimson stuff is pretty nuts too, but this is a little bit out of his wheelhouse, but he pulls it off. It off. Give the guy credit.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we did it, folks. Somehow, some way. next week I might change my mind on my ranking, but who cares, right? Let us know how you would rank these albums down in the comments below. Liquid Tension Experiment. Will we see another one? I don't know. I hope so. Gotta hope so. Have they talked about it at all? I haven't heard anything.
Not that I've heard of, but now that I'm sure it's going to be easier now that Mike's back in DT. You would think.
Yeah, because 3 of them have the same schedule pretty much, right? Except
yeah.
doing side stuff.
I still remember, and I remember George sent me a message right after it happened when I interviewed John Petrucci a couple of years ago about his solo record. And I don't even know why I asked him, but like towards the end of the interview, I'm like, so any chance we'll ever get another Liquid Tension Experiment album? And he kind of looked at me and he froze. He goes, we can talk about that off camera. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And then like the video aired, and then I got a message from George. He goes, what did he tell you? What did he tell you? I'm like, I can't say anything, man. Because of course he told me off camera that they were going to do it. They were already doing it.
So
the record was already being recorded when I interviewed him. I'm like, oh shit, all right. And then right there, I was like, wow. So you and Mike back together again, right? And
Pete, did they do the third one same place? Weren't they doing it kind of by you, like that Millbrook?
Oh, they were doing it. I think they did it up in Bearsville, right? That's
Bearsville. Okay.
Yeah, because that's or somewhere around here.
Is that Levin's studio that they did these?
I think so. I don't remember 100%, but yeah.
I know the first one, but I didn't remember what I read on the other 2.
Yeah, I don't remember. Hold on, let me see if it says anywhere on here. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look it up, but yeah, just
that's fine.
Yeah, and then like 2 weeks after that chat, they announced that Liquid Tension Experiment doing another album. So, and I think that probably was the the break the ice period for Mike eventually coming back into the band, because obviously he worked on John's solo record too, and it was just a matter of time before then. So
yeah, once all that went down, that's when I started thinking he'd be back in Dream Theater, because I didn't think before.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. I thought they've done so well apart. So that's that, but then he's showing up at their concerts and they do these albums, and then it's like, it's inevitable at this point.
And I've been impressed with Mangini. He's been pretty classy throughout this.
Yeah, and great drummer. I mean, yeah, he'll be fine. He'll
work. He'll work for sure.
He will.
He'll work for the rest of his life off of being in Dream Theater. Look what Derek's been able to parlay it into a whole career.
Yeah. I hope for Mike that he winds up in some other fairly high profile project or band, and I think he'll do just fine. It's a classy guy, great player. He walked into a difficult situation, and I think he did everything you could ask for from him and more. So and he took this all very well, and yeah, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. But this was inevitable, I think. So anyway. Thanks for watching, everybody. Rank them as you like them down in the comments below, and stay tuned for another Ranking the Album show coming up a week from today. Till then, visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and click on that notification bell to get alert of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit the like button before you leave. Make sure if you haven't seen it, all right, I highly recommend you guys go check out the latest episode of 4 Fusion Friday, which just aired this past Friday. We talk about Jeff Beck Wired and Simon Phillips Protocol 4, Brand X Masks, and Alan Holdsworth Metal Fatigue. 4 great albums. Somehow we ranked them as we liked them. We love them, but somehow you got to put them in some kind of order. So if you missed that, please go check it out. And we'll see you real soon here on Ranking the Albums. For George Lamie and Eric Porter, I am Pete Pardo. Have a good rest of your weekend, everybody. See you next week on Ranking the Albums. Bye-bye.